What's going on, guys? Today I'll be taking a look at Bethesda's DLSS Beta update for Starfield. However, we're gonna see if there's any performance improvements with Radeon GPUs as well. We noticed that there was performance improvements for NVIDIA GPUs on my previous video, but there was also CPU utilization improvements, which should translate to more performance for all Radeon users as well in CPU-bound scenarios. So that's what we're going to take a look at today. We're going to look at the same three areas: New Atlantis, A Life Planet, and HopeTech headquarters. And we're going to start with New Atlantis first. So let's jump on there and check it out. Okay, so we're going to go through the settings first. We're running the game at 4K with all the settings maxed out, so 4K native. And we're going to check out New Atlantis first, a well-known area for being CPU heavy. And as you can see here, there isn't a huge performance difference, but there is improvements here for sure. Not as big as there was with the 4090 comparison I made. There we were in the mid-80s on the beta upgrade, and in the 70s on the current version of the game, essentially. But there seemed to be better CPU utilization, which is really good to see. So we are seeing, you know, a little bit better performance with Radeon GPUs as well. Now the thing here is that while we are GPU limited most of the time, we are hitting that 5900X limit, like we are close to it. And you will see this when we test FSR 50% resolution scale. The reason why I've done that, we're going to look at that, is to essentially remove the GPU bottleneck completely and see what the CPU can do, right? So we're going to look at that in just a minute. We're going to compare FSR 50% resolution scale versus FSR 50% resolution scale between current version of the game and the beta version of the game. And you'll see that that will max out around mid-70s. So that's kind of where the limit is for the 5900X. So yeah, the performance improvements do translate to Radeon as well, and you'll probably see a little bit better performance if you have a faster CPU, right? Like on my 7800X 3D, there was bigger gains. But let's check out FSR right now. So right now we're running FSR 50% on both sides, between the current version of the game and the beta version of the game. And yeah, you're not seeing anything crazy. There's barely any difference, maybe a few FPS. So yeah, you're seeing better CPU utilization, but we've essentially hit the limit of our 5900X here. As you can see, the GPU utilization is well below 100%, and our power consumption is also below 400 watts. Now going back to my 4090 video I made on 7800X 3D, what was interesting in that video was that when we turned on, I essentially did the same thing I did here. I did FSR 50% with the current version, so this is footage of the 4090 here, and I also tested the DLSS implementation with the beta. And as you can see here, the CPU and GPU utilization on the DLSS side is much higher than it was on FSR 50%. And that's kind of, I'm trying to figure out why that is, but you're seeing here really nice frames per second gains with you know, with the beta version. But we're also seeing what the limit of the 7800X 3D is versus the 5900X. So yeah, it's quite a bit faster. With the 5900X was kind of limited to the mid 70s, and here we're in the 115s. But you can see how much higher the CPU and GPU utilization is with DLSS on, and that's kind of strange. But anyway, let's go back to our 7900 XTX here, and what we're seeing here is rather consistent. We see actually lower CPU utilization compared to the current version between the beta, and yeah, I mean, not a huge difference, but it's kind of strange how the current version with FSR is actually a little bit higher than the beta version with FSR 50% as well. So that is different. So kind of strange behavior on both sides. Let's remember that it's still a beta, right? So it's not final, but it is worth pointing out that, especially with the 4090, how much higher the CPU and GPU utilization was with DLSS on versus the 4090 with FSR on at 50% resolution scale. And the FPS was kind of similar. It was a little higher with the beta version and DLSS than FSR, but it wasn't anything crazy. So anyways, So the next area that we're going to look at, this will be interesting. So this will be a completely GPU bound test. As you can see here, we're getting around 65 FPS. We're at 4K native, all settings maxed out, and our 5900X is not becoming a limiting factor here. And I will prove that to you by dropping to FSR, and we'll see how much more frames we can get out of our CPU. Let's go back to the settings right now, and we're gonna drop FSR2 to 50%. So it's FSR performance, but the point is to essentially show that our 5900X has plenty more performance to give us. This is not holding us back. So we were in the mid 60s at 4K native, and with FSR 50%, we're hitting 100 FPS. And we've also reached our GPU limit as well. We've dropped below 100%, and our power consumption is around 400 watts. Now, the reason why I wanted to show this is because we're going to compare the current version of the game with the beta version of the game, and it will highlight the improvements that Bethesda has made in this beta version that also translate to Radeon. Let's take a look. So we're doing our comparison run here with the current version on the left and beta on the right. And as you can see, we are getting more FPS on the beta version of the game, and that's because the improvements that Bethesda has made to GPU utilization. The improvements seem to be a little higher on NVIDIA, but they're also improved on Radeon as well. Now, the NVIDIA side needed a bit more optimization, whereas the Radeon side was really good to begin with, and it seems to be a little bit better now, which is great. Now, if you also look at the CPU utilization, we are getting more FPS because of the better GPU utilization, but our CPU utilization is also lower in percentages than on the current version, showing that Bethesda has made optimizations to CPU utilization as well, which is really good to see. Now, one mistake that I made, and I forgot to take an FSR run of this same area, which I also didn't do for my last video, but I also have one more area to take a look at, and that's the Hope Tech headquarters, checking out their shipyard. We're going to look at 4K native and also FSR 50% performance. So let's go on there and take a look at that and see what stands out. So here at 4K native, we're more or less seeing about more of the same. We're seeing slightly higher performance because of better GPU utilization optimizations Bethesda's made. And we're also seeing lower CPU utilization on the beta side, even though we're getting slightly higher FPS. So these are all great things that we've seen on the last section in that live planet. What's interesting here, though, is that we're going to go and take a look at FSR 50% versus FSR 50%, and we will see that better CPU utilization translate into quite a bit of a gain in performance. This here is probably the best example of the optimizations. We're seeing around a 25% better performance increase on the beta side, whereas before we were CPU limited with the GPU well below 100%. On the beta version, we're GPU bound now, and our 5900X is generating up to 25% more performance while still having a little bit lower CPU utilization than on the current version of the game. So yeah, I would say this is very good to see from Bethesda. I wish game developers would make these optimizations before releasing the game, but they all do it. I guess it's better late than ever. It is good to see native support for DLSS and frame generation, and to see performance improve on Radeon as well. That is great to see CPU utilization improvements on a CPU heavy game like this. So I am very happy, and good job Bethesda. But this is a comparison I wanted to make for you guys and take a look at Radeon and NVIDIA together. If you did like this video, give it a like. I would appreciate it. And if you want to see more content like this, you can subscribe. If you want to suggest anything, leave it in the comments below. And I want to thank you for watching my video, and I will see you in the next one. Bye-bye.